Welcome to the Let's Eat Grandma Career Warrior Podcast.
And welcome to the Let's Eat Grandma Career Warrior Podcast, where our goal is not only to help you land your dream job, but to help you live your best life. Today, we're going to talk about how to break your career so you can make it work for you. If you feel like you're stuck in a rut, this could just be your episode. We'll cover what it means to break your career and how to do it properly. We'll also look at how to view your life as a portfolio of options, and we'll cover a few things that will help you to maximize your success as a career warrior. Today, I brought on Michael Gardon, CEO of Rejoin Media and host of CareerCloud Radio. Michael is a former trader turned entrepreneur who holds an MBA in finance and entrepreneurship. He has built a career in online media, previously holding roles at money.com, reviews.com, and was a managing editor at The Simple Dollar. Mike is widely quoted in media, including Good Financial Sense, The Huffington Post, Forbes, Business Insider, Yahoo News, Ask Men, Authority Magazine, reviews.com, and The Simple Dollar, just to name a few. Mike runs his business remotely with his team scattered across the US, and right now, Mike resides in the beautiful Midwest with his wife and 3 young boys, and the family is building their side hustle quote book. So let's get right to it. I'm looking forward to this episode, and I know that if you're listening to these words right now, there are going to be some really good key takeaways and perhaps some aha moments in your life in these next 30 minutes. So let's launch right into it with the 280th episode of the Career Warrior Podcast. All right, Mike, how you doing today?
I'm great, Chris. I'm really excited for this conversation. Thanks for having me.
I am too. And I just wanted to say, I've seen you around the circles and I love your story. And I think this would be a really great primer, perhaps, to launch our episode, because I think it's just something that a lot of people can relate to. So to read from your website, in 2018, I broke my career. Now I want to help others break theirs. The break is dedicated to career pivoters and those daring to change their path towards a better life, whether that's a new job, new business, or new calling. So I'd love it if you can open up with your own story about breaking your career and what this means to you.
Yeah, sure. So, I was that classic kid that didn't feel like they had a passion or a calling, didn't know exactly what they were going to do in life and in a career. And I've changed my career. I keep forgetting the count. It's like 6 or 7 different times. Like, as you said, I was a trader and I got into online media. I started another business. I've done a bunch of different things. So we'll kind of fast forward to 2018, where I was taking a little bit of a break. I was starting my family and having kids, and I was a little bit tired of the hustle bustle. And so I said, all right, well, how do I do this like corporate consulting thing? And so I was consulting for a large Fortune 500 company, full-time, helping them innovate new products and services to their customer base and all that kind of stuff. And I was pretty sure like I wasn't necessarily a big company corporate guy, but I said, hey, I could learn a lot of different things here that I haven't in my sort of startup career and trading, investing career. And so I'm going to give myself 3 years to do this. And we did some really cool work, built some new products and services, and then things would just kind of grind to a halt. And it was sort of like the bureaucracy took over and you couldn't get anything done. And it was at this point where I just became, just sort of frustrated that those were things that I couldn't control. And so I just had this moment where I was like, this isn't the right path for me. I wouldn't trade it, but looking out at the future, I just had this moment and I said, I have to do some things differently, and I have to chart a course in my mind of how I'm going to sort of get there. And so I started to incubate a side hustle. Really, it was kind of a portfolio of websites, SEO, traffic, or that kind of things that I sort of knew from my previous life and working in the industry. And I just said, how can I do this on my own? and I incubated that for about a year, maybe a little bit over a year, cooked it to a full-time gig, stepped off of the corporate consulting kind of gravy train, and I've sort of earned the right to wear a hat every day, wear a hoodie, and really owned my own career. And so the break is this idea that we all experience this moment in time, and I'm super interested in people's moments. So it's this moment in time where you've realized that what you're doing isn't working, and you have enough desire to change that. And so you set out on a new course. You not only break your career in terms of what you're doing, but you also break the inertia behind what's fueling your momentum and your vector, if you will. And you start to just take that apart. And so that's what I did. And I'm really proud of that whole journey and how I was able to kind of see it, chart a path, take my time, be patient with myself, and ultimately get to where I needed to go.
Yeah, and I love that term, break your career. It's something that it stuck out to me, because first when I read break your career, I was like, oh no, that sounds like a bad thing. I ruined my career or this progress that I'm making. But hearing about the way that you frame it or reframe it, I think is just so brilliant. And I think that there are probably a lot of job seekers listening right now that think that this could be the right move. So how do I know, as a job seeker or even somebody who's just sitting and working right now, that I think it's time that I should, quote, break my career or pivot?
Yeah, what I've learned in my time is that we have to tap into how we feel a lot more than we think. I'm a head guy. I'm a numbers guy. I'm a strategic thinking type guy. And a lot of time I would I got to stick this out. This feels bad, but this is the way, right? This is how people get ahead and progress. And so I think we need to really tap into how we feel, and choose ourselves and say, like, actually in 2022, there are 5 billion ways to earn a living, right? Like, it's this idea that I don't need a job. I need a revenue source. And I'm not saying everybody out there needs to be entrepreneurs at all. But if we stop thinking about someone else giving us something as a job and start framing our future life as, how am I going to generate revenue for me and my family unit, a world of opportunity opens up. And so I would say, like, feel it and then don't tolerate it. Create a path, chart a future, figure out realistic steps, and understand that it's not going to just happen overnight, right? For most of us who have obligations, we're not going to just say, oh yeah, my boss is treating me bad, I quit. Like, that's probably not the path for the majority of people. The path looks more like, this doesn't feel right. I want more. I want to learn X, Y, or Z. I want to feel a different way. And then, then use your logical brain and start to think about how you chart a course and get there while minimizing, your risks.
Yeah, I love that. And it's funny you mentioned numbers. Like, I'm a big head guy. I get in my head a lot. I overthink things. I'm the type of person that would pull out an Excel spreadsheet to make an important decision in my life. It's just the way that I roll. But I love your call to action for people to use their intuition a little bit more. Like, how do I feel? What is I hope I'm not using this incorrectly compared to what other people say, but what does my gut say? I'm thinking about the time when I quit my job, and I've mentioned this story before, but as a restaurant manager, it's just something really didn't sit right with me and how I felt about showing up to work every single day. But when I thought about doing this company full time and thinking about the things that I would be doing, I felt this feeling of excitement. And I knew, just sitting in a random cafe up in upstate New York, that I knew this was the right decision for me. And it was like just this gut feeling. So one thing that I might ask, perhaps this is for head people or for people who are maybe good at using their intuition a little bit more, but how do I figure out where I belong next? Do you have any practical tips or strategies in order to figure out like, okay, I should start applying for these jobs or start nudging myself in this direction?
Yeah. And I mean, to be clear, like you have to use both, right? I'm not saying like you just forget all the head and the analytical stuff, right? It's both. But when you're thinking about, like, if we think about, just to take a step back, like if we're thinking about all of, quiet quitting and the Great Resignation, right? Like this is a big recognition by people that are saying like, I need something different. And so I think setting yourself on the right vector comes from like the heart and how you feel, and then getting there comes from the head. So you asked about tips, and a lot of this comes from my experience in investments and as a trader. The way I thought about how do I figure out what I should do and what my calling is if I have no idea was I have to do a bunch of things. And each of those things is an option. So in finance, an option is this kind of scary word that's very complicated, but all it really is you have the right, but not the obligation to do something in the future. So what we need to do with our careers is to create a portfolio of options. Like when we have a lot of uncertainty about what we want to do in our life, we need to go see a bunch of things. So that's the advice we give to college graduates, right? It's like, go see the world, do stuff, because when you're young, you have a lot more time to kind of, if you make a mistake, get over it.
Sure.
So how I thought about it was,
it's also good investing advice. I know you come from finance too, so just the analogy really works.
It's the idea behind a diversified portfolio of a diversified portfolio of investments. I mean, the greatest investors in the world don't find one company, like they don't know everything. They don't find one company, put all of, hundreds of billions of dollars into that one company and ride off into the sunset. They don't do that. What they're good at is managing, like really recognizing that there's uncertainty in the world and they don't know everything, and they get really good at managing that uncertainty. And so how you do that is you diversify. So it's just from my own story, right? Like I decided that I was going to lean on some of the skills that I had developed in the past from online media and all of that. But I still didn't know what area or niche I was gonna do, right? Like I didn't say, oh, I love fitness, so I'm gonna go be a fitness blogger, because in reality, there are thousands, if not millions, of fitness bloggers, right? And not all of them are gonna rise to the top of Google search or on top of LinkedIn and YouTube and all of those types of things. So I said, if I don't know what it is, what I need to do is I need to get a basket. I need to get kind of a little portfolio of sites that I could potentially work on. And so what happens then is if you have a portfolio, then what great investors do is that's their ante, if you will, right? They put a little bit of money in each of these things. Let's just call it like 3 to 5 things. And then as you gain more signal and you get more clarity and you get more certainty about what is working and what is not working, then you can start to bet bigger. And so what I ended up doing was I sold one of the sites that I had purchased to work on. I shuttered another project, and I just started betting on CareerCloud and CareerCloud Radio because it was just very easy to see the steps. Like it was working. Yeah. What we were doing was working. And over time, I just really started aligning my love for coaching. Like I love coaching kids sports and I love coaching people. And I just started aligning that with this whole career space. And I kind of found my calling and what I want to just put my energy into through that process. It wasn't that I consciously went, oh, I'm going to get into career and career coaching. Didn't at all. It was through this development of using this kind of portfolio of options approach and then ruthlessly cutting things that aren't working, stop spending time on that and doubling down on what is working.
I love that. That makes so much sense. And I think a lot of people think about it a little too linearly, like I'm going to quit my job in this and then move over full time to this job that has like the perfect transferable skills. And I think that looking at it more as that portfolio of options, like you said, is just, it's going to yield more success. And I think it makes more sense. It makes a lot of sense to me.
Like, I don't really understand how somebody can say, my situation today is not optimal, but that one is. Right? Like, there's so much in between that we don't know. And so, like, you have to be humble and you have to recognize, like, there's just volatility and uncertainty in everyday decisions, right? Like, there are just things that we are not going to know until we're sitting in the seat and experiencing them. And so I think about that idea of diversifying my decisions in almost everything that I do. It's not it's partly a hedge, but it's partly like just recognizing that I don't know what I don't know.
Right. Could you maybe give an example of somebody who maybe they're not ready to take a leap to entrepreneurship, or it's not right for them? I know it's not right for a lot of people, but if I do want to work for a corporation or perhaps do some freelance work, working with another company, what could using a portfolio of options look like for me?
Yeah, so I think like in your example of someone who's freelancing, I think the first thing you do is start where you are, right? Like, it's okay, you have a set of skills that you're being paid for now. You go and use those as a freelancer by getting, one other client. Now you're a freelancer. But I think the whole idea of freelancing is to sort of see different things in different projects. And this is how I've transitioned my career in the past several times. It's just by freelancing.
Okay.
You go out and you get, let's say, three to four clients. And if you just want to explore the world, right? Like you set up 3 to 4 different clients that are doing different things in different industries that are of interest to you. You go work for them for a while. And then at that point in time, you can decide, oh, maybe I'm not a full-time freelancer. I would really like to spend 100% of my time working for this company in this culture and doing this type of work. So that's like the portfolio of options in action. You can use it to make a total career change, or you can go explore cultures. You can go explore, do I want to work for a startup? Do I want to work for a more established company? There's all sorts of kind of applications of that.
Absolutely. That's really powerful. We spoke about in a previous conversation about figuring out what our natural advantages are. And I made a note here to ask you about the concept of advantage mapping. So can you tell me what advantage mapping is and how I can use it?
Yeah, sure. So this is one of those things that came out of my, out of my trading and investing background. So Warren Buffett, who almost everybody knows who he is, he's a billionaire, greatest investor in the world, talks about this concept of circle of competence. So know the things that you know really, really well and stay around that area. And you can make a really good living doing that, but there's a difference between like what you think you know and what you actually know. And so he's talking about it from the standpoint of knowledge. People, when I started talking about this concept, people started asking me, well, how do I figure that out? And I said in my head, I thought about it, and this has just happened recently in like the last few months that I've mapped this out. I said, it's not really about what you know. It's about what are your unique natural advantages, and then figure out how to use those and exploit those. So I set up this process called advantage mapping, where I kind of outline 8 sources of advantage, things that people might not really think about, things like energy, like what gives you energy versus what drains your energy. All of that kind of stuff. And send people through a process of gathering feedback in each of those areas. Some of it is just in your head and what you know about yourself. And then some of it is you could go, use 360 review material or whatever. But the idea is that you go through like a week-long process, or you could do it faster, but I think like an hour or so a day in each one. And then you just start to pull out, like, what are the common themes here? Where's the crisscross? What are people telling me I'm really good at? And then we have this exploratory process of how do I use those advantages in maybe some way that we haven't thought about before, to really get greater alignment between who I am naturally, what I want to learn about, and what I want to do to bring money into my bank account. So you can. I'm still kind of. It's in process, and I'm still kind of. Working on it as we go, but I'm talking about it in my newsletter. And, if you hit careercloud.com/thebreak, you can figure out, how to get over to some of those archives and learn with me as I develop that concept.
I was going to ask if you had a blog or resource about it, but it sounds like the best way to keep up to date would be to subscribe to your newsletter. Yeah,
because you can see the archives. And so I have one specifically dedicated to like what the advantage mapping system is. And now I'm in the process of writing like on each week a different source of advantage and how you use that. So it's all in process, but it's been really helpful. I've gotten great feedback from people so far. I had one guy that basically said he wanted to really get into YouTube, and he figured it out through this process that he actually needs to go look at like community management jobs for like nonprofits. It was this crazy thing where that was way more aligned with how he felt and what gives him energy. And so it set him on a completely different course that he never would have thought about before. So it was kind of an interesting little case study.
Man, I love that you use the phrase, like, what gives you energy, like the thing that gives you energy. I was reading a book. This is from a past podcast guest of mine, Lisa Lewis. And one thing that a lot of career coaches talk about, or just a lot of career advice is given, like, what are your strengths? Ask what your strengths are. And what she said in the book is strengths don't necessarily need to be what you're good at right now. I think a lot of people put strengths in this box, being like, oh, what am I good at the moment? I'm good at SEO. I'm good at marketing, and I'm not good at this thing or that thing. But a strength can be something that you feel just this burning desire to complete, or this passion to actually put the work in for, because, that's going to be a strength over the person that doesn't have that same sort of passion, because you're going to be the one to put in the work and the hours. So I don't know if you have anything else to say about advantage mapping and, I guess how to figure out the things that give me energy. But for me, I think that is one of the most powerful insights that we could look at when we're finding career alignment.
Yeah. So like there's this kind of concept that the easiest plan to adhere to, or the easiest plan to execute on is one that you can adhere to, right? Like if you all of a sudden go from couch to wanting to do CrossFit every day, for fitness, like you're going to last a couple of weeks and you're going to quit. But if you just say, hey, I'm going to start by walking 5 minutes a day, and I'm going to just cross the days off that I do that, and then I'll build from there, that you can stick to and adhere to. So the idea of the advantage map is teasing out these advantages where things are easier for you to do, right? There's plenty of people who are good at something and don't like it. Like, think about all of the lawyers that we have in this country that like went into law and developed some expertise and are good at that, but they hate it. There are so many of those people. And so that's a skill that isn't a source of energy, right? So the other advantage areas that I have kind of come up with are obviously expertise, what we're talking about with skills, how you take action, like how you actually do things and work, your aptitudes. So that's just the natural things that come easy to you. A lot of times we eschew those. Like, my son's really good at drawing. If I was really good at drawing, which I'm not, I would think about that as an aptitude, and then I would start to think about like, well, how can I use that more in what I do in the future, even though I've put it in the trash can of my mind for the last 20 years. Your personality, just like how you're wired and how you act, and how you make judgments. And then there are how you learn and areas of interest. So there are all of those sources of advantages, things that we don't necessarily think about all the time. But when we put them together, we can start to see patterns, and then we can have a nice brainstorming session about how we use those things, because those are the things that I'm good at, are going to fuel my energy centers. And then that's going to fuel the plan that I can stick with over the long term. And it's going to fuel how I feel as a human being doing the work that I do in the future.
I love that. It's so powerful. So, Mike, you've built this amazing brand called CareerCloud, and Rejoin Media. Obviously, it takes a lot of marketing and getting the right types of attention. And I think for job seekers, getting their resume out there, getting their personal brand, their LinkedIn, etc., is marketing. It's sales. It's getting the right types of attention. So for me, I'm connecting those two things, and I'm wondering, are there any lessons learned or transferable things about building your own brand that you could transfer over to job seekers who are looking to get the right type of attention?
Yeah, for sure. So how do I say this? Like, you have to come up with, at least for building an audience or building a brand, you have to come up with a unique point of view that cuts through the clutter. Because there's so many people out there talking on social media and doing things and vying for PR and all this stuff, right? So what's your point of view? And mine is the break, and mine is how to use those principles to change your life and change what you want to do in the future. And so I think for somebody that's looking for a job or getting out there, it's like your clutter is the number of resumes and the process that's set up for companies to screen resumes. Like, we need to just stop mass applying, and we need to put more creative energy into the ways that we stand out. And the ways that we get our resume, which is kind of our teaser product, in the hands of the right people. And so I love what you guys are doing. And on CareerCloud, like we and from my investment background, I always say, like, invest in yourself and use money to solve problems. And one of the big problems that I see people have all the time is they come to me with, like, how do I do this resume thing? Like, I'm going to rewrite my resume. I'm like, don't. Like, give it to some professionals. And Let's Eat Grandma is not paying me to say this. Like, I actually feel this way. Spend $100 or whatever and have some people write your resume. Take that off your plate. And now take that time that you've just created and put it into creatively finding an edge in how you're going to get noticed. And just a couple of examples like that I've heard that are kind of wacky and out there. I recently saw a young woman sent a cake with her resume, like, printed on it to, like, somebody at Nike, like in marketing at Nike or something. And nobody does that, right? That's awesome. That is a way that you get, she just bypassed like thousands of people in the circular inbox file, right? Yeah. And even if her resume wasn't good or she's not qualified, she's gonna get an interview. Yeah, like, because she stood out. Another one, it's my favorite one, is I saw a guy. He found a hiring manager on Venmo somehow. I don't know how he did that. I would love to talk to this guy, but found him on Venmo, sent a request for money for $50,000 over Venmo for copywriting services. And it's like, that's genius. He got hired, right? He got an interview and got hired.
That's awesome too.
Because that's so creative. Now, and I don't think everybody has to do that, but there are less crazy things. There is LinkedIn, where you can actually go find hiring managers at companies and start a dialogue with them and build a relationship. You can use video resumes or video cover letters and just shoot a video. Like, super simple. I can hit Loom and I can say, here's who I am and this is what I'm doing and what I'm looking for. And not that many people do that. So it's take the tasks off your plate that aren't going to, like, move the needle in terms of marketing. And put your creative energy into figuring out how to get your name and face in the hands of the right person.
I love that. I think a huge mistake a lot of people are making, on the same vein, to talk about what you just spoke about, is they're sending these resumes that look the same. They look good. They sound like poetry in a way, very vanilla poetry. And you're reading it and you're like, gosh, that sounds, grammatically correct. And it sounds like something that's professional. But it looks like every other resume that is probably going to come across the desk of a hiring manager or somebody looking to recruit for a job. And I remember looking at this one person's, this guy had an amazing history. He spent a lot of time in the creative fields, doing creative direction and other jobs like that. But I read his summary and it was a few sentences of something that could have been copied and pasted from Google. And I remember he did a music video for Cher. And I was like, what? You've had this really amazing history, and this is something that no one can ever claim that they've done. Why don't you put that somewhere on your summary? Because this is going to make you stand out. And so I think if a lot of job seekers took that advice and what you're calling people to do, which is to use some creativity to stand out, to differentiate, I think that not only would they get noticed a little bit quicker, but I think just the world of recruiting and job seeking would be a better place because people would find these matches a little bit better. So I love that advice.
I bet that guy in that example probably said to you, well, I'm just following directions. Like the company's process is to submit my resume and a cover letter and whatever. And so he's not thinking, how can I get my best work in front of them? Stop following that break that process. That is a process that needs to be broken, right? That the herd is doing that, right? The herd is following that. You need to go against the herd, against the grain in order to stand out.
I love that. So Mike, you've been a great guest. What is one thing you absolutely want every single person on this podcast to take away?
It is to choose yourself. Like, no one is going to hand you, even if you have the greatest mentors in the world and you've got a great boss, like there are going to be times in the future where that person is going to have to make a decision between their job and you, or they're going to have some other competing interest. You have to choose yourself first and listen to your gut and decide where you want to go. Because you can have virtually anything you want, but you can't have everything you want. And if you're sitting around waiting for other people to sort of give you a break, that's not, in my experience, going to work. But when you start channeling what you want to do and you go through a process of aligning yourself with the work that you do in order to have a happier existence on the planet with the time that you spend at work, like that's how you're eventually going to get to where you're going.
I love that. Amen. Very powerful words of wisdom. So typically at this point, I ask guests to share a little bit about themselves and where they can find out more information. But I want to have a little bit of fun because we just talked about differentiation and standing out. But how do you think that CareerCloud is different than another source of information for job seekers? Like, what do you do that is special and stands out that could really add value to job seekers?
Yeah. So at CareerCloud, like the online, careercloud.com online content, you're going to get a lot of the resources that you might see somewhere else. But what we're doing is layering on top of that, the podcast and the newsletter, which has a very different kind of slant than that. And so I think like there's something for everybody. If you need tips for job seeking, you can get that, right? You're going to get that through Google search. But if you're someone who really wants to think holistically about their career and their life going forward, the break, I think, is where you're going to resonate the most, because it's not just for entrepreneurs. I am one, so I have a little bias there, but I've been through jobs and I've changed my career. And if you're ever thinking about any type of change, you're going to get a lot of value out of that. And then the CareerCloud Radio podcast, what I try to do is just have like inspiring conversations with people where they've done something different. And it's sort of that inspiration of, yes, I can do it too, to motivate people to start choosing themselves and forging their own paths.
Cool. So I will make sure to link everything in the description as I normally do. But I think it's great what you're doing, Mike. And thank you for all your service and the things that you're doing for the world of job seekers. I think it's great.
Well, likewise. Thanks, Chris, for having me. Pleasure to talk to you.
Perfect. Take care. And listeners, this wraps up episode 280 of the Career Warrior podcast. Really enjoyed doing this one, had a lot of fun. And me in particular, I can resonate and vibe along with the concept of being different. I think really this is one of the best ways to stand out. I recommend all job seekers take inventory, look at their personal brand, their strengths, and find out what makes them different and where their advantages are. As I mentioned in this episode, I'll make sure to link Mike's blog, the podcast, all of these resources so you can get the most out of them. And I can't wait to see you next time. Remember, we release these episodes every other Monday, so make sure to subscribe and stay tuned. Thanks for tuning in. This was the Career Warrior Podcast. And for more on your job search, please make sure to check out Let's Eat Grandma's website at letseatgrandma.com/CWP. That's where you can find her blog, attend job seeker events, and learn more about her awesome resume services. That's all. I'll see you next episode this Monday morning.